I think first and foremost, the VMI creates an atmosphere in which you have to exercise peer leadership at some point, whether it's in classroom projects, whether it's correcting someone else just as, through the general committee, whether it's having some kind of rank, participating in an NCAA athletic activity or a club sport. Regardless, VMI takes people from all these different backgrounds and puts them all together in one place and says, essentially, you have to rely on each other now. You have to have each other's backs. You are brothers, regardless of if we're men or women. The spirit of brotherhood unites us.
Welcome to the VMI Center for Leadership and Ethics Leadership Journey podcast.
This podcast aims to share leadership stories from our VMI Corps of Cadets and high-profile leaders who visit the Center for Leadership and Ethics and VMI Post. We're on this journey with you. Hey, I'm Emily Coleman.
And I'm Derek Pinkham. We're your hosts of the podcast. Josh Austin has lived in many states around the U.S., but claims Virginia as his home. He is the Vice President of the Class of 2020.
We talked about his role in that position and the dilemmas of peer-to-peer leadership. In our conversation, we covered leadership competencies such as decision-making, self-development, empathy, responsibility, and responding to change.
And without further delay, we give you graduating first-class cadet Josh Austin. Welcome, Josh Austin, to the Leadership Journey podcast. Emily, take it away.
All right, Josh, we just want to hear about where you're from and how you ended up at VMI.
All right, well, that's a bit of a complicated story. My dad's a career active duty Air Force officer, so I grew up moving around quite a bit. We were never living outside of the country, but sometimes it feels like we lived just about everywhere within the country. I was born in Florida, then we moved to North Carolina, Idaho, Alabama, Idaho again, and then ended up back down in Florida. And that's where I completed my high school education. And I then matriculated to VMI from there. But my family is from Amherst, Virginia, which is, if you don't know where that is, it's a little slightly northwest of Lynchburg. And my mom and my dad grew up about half an hour apart from each other here in Amherst County. And at different points over the course of my life, we've always managed to make it back here to visit our family. And so this is the area, Amherst, that I consider to be home.
Awesome. So you're from a military family. So did you know that you always wanted to go to a military school? Is that something that you've always wanted to do?
I didn't. For quite a while, I was really interested in being a lawyer. I did a lot of speech and debate in high school, and my family seemed to be on board with that idea. They seemed to like it, and I thought that was what I wanted to do for quite a while. But towards the end of high school, I really started to sit down and think about what I wanted to do with my life and what my purpose was going to be. And I definitely think that it's possible to be an honorable lawyer and to do good as a lawyer, but I didn't think that that was the right path for me. And I had always had military service in my background since I come from a military family. And I've always been interested in military history. I've read a lot of the books that my dad brought home with him from different professional development courses. When I had this moment of introspection, it was pretty easy to settle on the idea of the military as a way to serve.
So
awesome.
how'd you hear about VMI then?
And being from Virginia originally, I'd always known about VMI. And then also knowing my military history, I had read a little bit about VMI's part in the Civil War. And my dad is actually a Virginia Tech Corps of Cadets alumnus. So I grew up seeing his ring and his saber enjoy hearing his stories about what it was like to be a cadet at Tech. When I started thinking about a military career, I wanted to go to a college that I felt would prepare me for that, and that is what originally got VMI on my radar. But it wasn't just that. Once I started learning more about VMI, I really realized that this was a place that was grounded in a lot more than that. It was a place that prioritized and emphasized integrity and self-improvement, and I was really looking for somewhere that would make me better.
Awesome.
Great. Yeah.
So are you majoring in history then?
So I'm an international studies major, but I'm a history minor, and I love history, and I've continued to do historical reading on my own over the past 4 years as well.
Okay. So that's how you got ended up in Colonel Gray's class.
That's exactly right.
So what else have you gotten involved with at VMI, and are you in any leadership positions now?
I am. So over the course of my cadetship, I feel very honored to have gotten a taste of, I think, just about everything that the Institute has to offer. I did cadre for my first couple of years. I was a company clerk and then a master sergeant my second class year. I consider it my biggest honor to have been elected vice president of my class early in our fourth class year. And they tell me that it's for life, so I hope that I can measure up to that responsibility. I've been involved in a couple of club sports, the combat shooting team for a couple of years, but it got a little much with my other responsibilities, so I ended up dropping that. But I have continued to do club jiu-jitsu. And lastly, I've held various leadership positions at ROTC. Last semester, I was the Marine Company commander, and then this semester, I am the senior Bulldog advisor, which means that I'm responsible for helping to prepare the second classmen who are going to OCS this coming summer.
So you are graduating in a week or so, is that correct?
Yes, I am.
And so you're commissioning this week.
That's right.
So what's that going to be like?
Well, not the way that I originally imagined it, but frankly, I'm just grateful to have gotten here. You know, there was a time when all this was just a dream. I'm incredibly grateful to have had the opportunity to get here, and I'm very thankful to all the folks who have helped me along the way. So me and my family are going to be here on the farm in Amherst for the ceremony. We're going to do a Zoom call with all the Marine Corps commissionees at 12 on May 15th, and then after that we'll split off and conduct our individual ceremonies.
Great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, like you said, it's not what you had expected, but it is closing a door and opening another one and getting on with it, right?
It is. I think that's a good description. This is a time of transition. And, you know, it's funny because when you start out at VMI as a rat or even as a third classman, when everything still seems so new, VMI, it can be very imposing. It's a big system with lots of moving parts and pieces. Just like any new system, it takes a while to get used to it. It's a new place. You know, you're away from home for maybe the first time in your life. But over time, over the past 4 years, the Institute has become my home. I've become very comfortable there, especially being a first-classman this year. I find that I know just about everybody there, and I've gotten into a routine that I'm comfortable with, and I feel like I've mastered the game. And unfortunately, the way life works is that once you get to that point, it's usually time to move on.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is a bittersweet time for me. I miss my brother Rap already. We've unfortunately been apart for the past month and a half or so. I'm going to miss VMI, believe it or not. But I think it's time to move on. There are bigger challenges awaiting in the future.
So what are the duties of the vice president of somebody's class?
Well, first and foremost, to help the president do whatever he needs to do. And Sam Trepp is our president. I'm sure you've had, in fact, I know you've had him on your podcast before.
Right.
To just take a moment to say what a fine, upstanding man I think he is. It's been an honor to be his vice president.
He was a lot of fun to talk to.
I'm sure he was.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've seen myself as his right-hand man for the past 4 years. I've tried to do that job well. But then in addition to that, one of the biggest responsibilities that the vice president has is to organize ring figure. I was really busy fall semester of last year, and for about a year or so before that, putting together our ring committee, supervising the design of the ring, getting the orders all coordinated and taken care of, planning ring figure, where it would occur, who would be there, who would speak, how all that would take place. And it was a long process. It took a lot of time, but I had some great folks helping me along the way. couldn't have done it without them. And it was just incredibly rewarding to see our class come together for that big event. Third major duty that the vice president has is that I sit on what are called GC trials. I can elaborate on that for your listeners if they haven't heard that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. One of the biggest missions of the General Committee, and I should say here that the General Committee is a committee of cadet leaders composed of the president, vice president, and historian of each of the three upper classes in barracks. And we as the General Committee have as our number one mission maintaining the standards of behavior of the Corps of Cadets. So we are outside of and separate from the regimental system or the rank system, although we do work in close cooperation with them sometimes. But we are responsible for upholding these standards of behavior. And the way that we do that is we allow any cadet, if any cadet sees another cadet do something that is a breach of the Code of Cadet, then they send them up to us and we convene and hold a trial, a GC trial, in which we, within the guidance of regulations and based on the facts of the particular situation, we assign a penalty to that cadet.
That sounds like a pretty tough responsibility, yeah.
It is, and frankly, that's something I've been doing consistently now for the past 3 years. We usually have a GC trial every couple weeks, and it is challenging because I feel the weight, or we feel the weight of making the right decision, making a fair decision very heavily. And there have been times when we've really wrestled with what the right decision is in a particular case.
Sure. You thought you weren't going to be a lawyer, huh?
Well, yeah. But yes, there are definitely some legal aspects to it. It's a matter of taking the regulations for cadet behavior and then applying it to a particular situation in a way that is fair and human, not just the inflexible bureaucratic application of a one-size-fits-all rule to a particular situation, but really looking at the facts of the case and making a fair decision.
Right. It's not just the paper and ink that's written on.
Right.
I'm sure if you, I was going to say, if you had a friend that you had to make a decision for like that'd be hard on your relationship with your peers.
It's time to recuse yourself, right?
As a matter of fact, we do that. We will
For sure.
We will recuse ourselves if, say, our roommate or a close friend is
Sure.
But, at a place like VMI, with small class sizes and then also given the close bonds that we form with our brother rats, it's very hard to find someone in your class that you don't have somewhat of a relationship with, or even outside your class. The challenge of peer leadership and in making judgments that affect your peers is not something that we can get away from.
Right.
Right.
Kind of rolling off of that and that peer relationship, and also you talked about how, you're going to graduate and that there's bigger challenges coming. How has VMI prepared you to make decisions like that with your peers and also face those challenges that you have coming in your future?
Well, my short answer is that I think VMI has prepared me extremely well. I think first and foremost, VMI creates an atmosphere in which you have to exercise peer leadership at some point, whether it's in classroom projects, whether it's correcting someone else just as, through the General Committee, whether it's having some kind of rank, participating in an NCAA athletic activity or a club sport. Regardless, VMI takes people from all these different backgrounds and puts them all together in one place and says, essentially, you have to rely on each other now. You have to have each other's backs. You are brothers, regardless of if we're men or women. The spirit of brotherhood unites us. That requires you to learn how to work with people, how to treat people fairly, and how to lead your peers. Because if you don't learn how to do that, then not only are you going to let other people down, but they're not going to be able to rely on them when you need to, and you're not going to earn their respect. And respect at VMI most definitely has to be earned.
Right.
So there's just the general environment and the activities that we participate in. And then the specific things that I've done, I think, think have prepared me for the future in specific ways. Being on the general committee, being in an elected position where I'm responsible to an entire class of people who I love and care about and I want to do my best for, it can be tough sometimes because as an elected official, we're responsible to them and we have to learn to put them first. But at the same time, you will make decisions, and I have made decisions that can be a little controversial sometimes. And so you have to learn how to, and VMI is very good at this in general, but you have to learn how to maintain your own moral compass and follow your own moral compass. Not only in the sense of the honor code, but you have to learn how to recognize the right decision and make the right decision even when it's not popular. And also to admit when you haven't made the right decision and be honest about that.
Right, and authentic, right? Because if you're not that, they're not going to follow.
That is exactly right. VMI cadets can see through insincere person in a heartbeat.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, and that's also, that could be not that you all don't want to uphold that honor code or anything, but for somebody who's put in that leadership position, that's a little bit of pressure to even be, on your better behavior because you know that you're going to have cadets that you have to give a ruling to and you better not have done the same thing type attitude.
That is a very insightful point. So there have been times when I have decided to err on the side of safety precisely for that reason. So there have been times, VMI has so many different rules about what you can and can't do and where you can and can't go at particular times or what you have to be wearing at the time. There have been times when if somebody had done this, it would not have been a breach of any rule that I was responsible for upholding. I would not have gone after somebody and tried to get them in trouble for doing something. However, I opted not to do that myself precisely because I knew that if I did that, first of all, I would have felt as though I were being hypocritical. And secondly, because I knew that if somebody saw me doing that, let's use an example because I think that would help. Someone's coming back from a weekend and they need to run to Walmart in civilian clothes. So technically, you're not supposed to be in county in civilian clothes. However, it's something that, if it's just going to be for a second and you're already coming back from a weekend, it's really not a big deal. I would not try to get someone in trouble for that or go out of my way as a peer leader to try to catch somebody doing that or something like that. However, there have been times when I've said, hey, I'm going to change into proper uniform before we go to this professor's house for dinner or before we go do this, just because I know that I'm not saying that I think that you're doing the wrong thing by doing this, but I need to be on my best behavior.
Right. Yeah. There's a whole lot of self-discipline. There's a whole lot of lead by example there. Right. It seems to me like it's a system set up to lead by example specifically.
But also being in that position, that really, I think, I don't know, you tell me, does that help you build what your core values are coming out of VMI? Like what matters most to you and what you are going to use as a leader when you face other challenges?
Yes, absolutely it does. So I already knew from having followed different leaders that servant leadership was very important to me. However, once I found myself in leadership position, I really realized that as a leader, in the military we talk about leaders having two purposes, mission accomplishment and troop welfare. I think that applies to any leadership position. You have two jobs, to get the job done and take care of your people and put their best interests before your own. Once I found myself in leadership positions, I realized that sometimes you're presented with a choice between putting yourself first and trying to aggrandize yourself and stroke your own ego, or being humble and serving the people that you were put in that position to serve. I definitely didn't make the right decision every single time. This is something that I'm an imperfect, flawed human being, and this is something that we have to work at. But that's definitely something that I tried to keep foremost in my mind and tried to put into action.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's kind of like being a lifelong learner. I guess that's part of what VMI does is help you all become those lifelong learners.
Some of us are late bloomers.
Absolutely. I would classify myself as a late bloomer, frankly. Because I actually, I didn't go into this earlier, but I actually enlisted in the Marine Corps Reserve before coming to VMI. So I finished up with high school, and I was sort of going through that time of self-inquiry and trying to figure out how to best live my life. And I wanted to go to VMI, but I didn't really feel like I was ready yet for a few different reasons. I wanted to get some more experience, in the outside world, and I had not really played any sports in high school, so I felt like I needed to develop myself more physically before going to VMI. So I actually enlisted in the Marine Corps Reserves, and was in the reserves for about a year before matriculating at VMI, and then I stayed in the reserves for a year while I was at VMI until I picked up an ROTC scholarship and got discharged. People go through different experiences, and they develop at different speeds and in different ways, and feel like that is not the right path for everybody, but I think it was the right path for me to get me to the place that I needed to be to come to VMI and really get the most out of it.
Right. You could consider that a gap year, right? Or not?
Well, in one sense, yes, and I don't know, I wonder where the gap went.
That's right.
What is motivating you or helping you get through having to move virtually? Move all your classes online and being away from I know you talked about being away from your BRs a little bit, but tell me a little bit more how you've been transitioning with that and maybe some things that you've been doing to keep up the motivation and get through the semester.
Well, that's a good question. I think the number one thing is that I have the last 3.5 years to look back on. All the things that I've learned, all the work habits, the exercise habits that I've learned, and the bonds that I've forged. And honestly, I felt like I owe it to VMI and my brother Raf and myself to not just let all that be forgotten. And frankly, I think that these past couple months have been a test of what VMI has done for all of us, because VMI is great, and it's great to talk about being at VMI, being from VMI, but really at the end of the day, the value of a VMI education is found in how it affects how you live after you leave. Because, I'm going to be honest, it can be easy. Some people struggle with VMI. It depends on how well you deal with or how well you live in a very organized, highly structured environment. And I'm just one of those people who loves that. I thrive in structured environments. And so it can be easy for people like me to do great in that environment. But then once you take us out of it and we're sort of left on our own devices, it can be hard. And frankly, I found the past couple of months to be a little difficult for that reason. I have been able to put into practice the things that I've learned at VMI to keep doing my work and to keep exercising here and keep trying to develop myself here on my own. So I've been taking the opportunity to read some books for professional development. I actually just got done with a book called What It Is Like to Go to War by Carl Marlantes from the Commandant's reading list. Really good book. Of course, I've done the finals now, hard as believe, but while academics were still a part of my life, I was following the same kinds of scheduling procedures and work procedures that I used while I was at VMI. And then I have made exercise part of my routine as well. The long and the short of it is that I've been trying to take what I've learned at VMI over the past 3.5 years and apply it to my life here at home.
So you've been waking up at 7 o'clock every day?
Well, usually between 7 and 8, but I'll be honest, I think that it matters less when you get up and a lot more what you do after you get up.
That is great. So, Josh, what does leadership mean to you?
Well, to me, leadership is all about mission accomplishment and troop welfare. It's about getting the job well, and I'll add something. It's about mission accomplishment, troop welfare, and integrity. I think that without one of those three pieces, you're missing something integral to leadership. It's about getting the job done because that's why you got the job. It's about taking care of your people because being a leader doesn't mean that you're more important than everybody else. Being a leader means you have the experience and the responsibility necessary for that position, and that position comes with responsibilities to the people in your organization. And then thirdly and finally, without integrity, not only are you going to crash and burn, but you also lose sight of the whole reason why we're trying to get the job done in the first place, because the means ultimately don't justify the end. If we're not doing the right thing, then I question whether or not we should be doing it at all. I think that those are the key 3 factors of leadership.
Great. That's way to end. Good.
Awesome.
Thank you very much for coming on and talking to us. I think we've just gotten lucky. I think we've gotten lucky to talk to a bunch of really interesting, super smart, very uplifting people. So
motivating.
Really appreciate you coming on and talking to us.
Yeah, thank you so much, and congratulations on your finals and also on graduating. That's very exciting.
Yeah, it's great. It's so good.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's been a huge honor to have been interviewed, and I hope that I was of some help to the work that you're doing.
The VMI Center for Leadership and Ethics would like to thank the following.
Cadet Caleb Minus, class of 20, for the intro and backing music. Find more of his musical stylings on his Instagram page, @MinusOfficial. That's @MYNUS official.
Colonel David Gray, United States Army retired, Director of the VMI Center for Leadership and Ethics.
And of course, as always, our podcast guests. Find this podcast and other CLE programming information on the VMI Center for Leadership and Ethics website, or try our YouTube channel.
Follow the VMI Center for Leadership and Ethics on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram accounts. See you next episode of The Journey. Thanks for tuning in.